Hi, this is Lisa Loeb, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From John Blystein at Rolling Stone, everything you need to know about the Live Nation settlement and what comes next.
An op-ed from entertainment lawyer Crystal Delgado for Music Business Worldwide. The problem with AI companies, quote-unquote, starting fresh.
And from Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide, 80 artists generated over $10 million each from Spotify last year. Over 1,500 generated over $1 million. Here is the full breakdown. And all this plus a Billboard guest column this week by our own Jay Gilbert. We are glad you're here. It's episode 293. We're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Good morning to you, Jay Gilbert. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, too. You just mentioned it was episode 293, and you and I were looking at that recently. We've done, I think, 30-plus bonus episodes.
Yes.
So we're well over
We're in the
300. Yeah.
Yes, we are.
It's fun. This week, South by Southwest has
gosh.
begun. Yeah, 2026. South by Southwest Festival is taking place now through March 18th in beautiful Austin, Texas. And unfortunately, this is one of those rare years that I'm going to miss it. And I'll tell you about that in a moment.
It's been a while since I've been as well. And the last time I went, I got to say, it is so unbelievably crowded. I really miss going, but I don't miss the crowds. It's pretty crazy when you get there. But boy, there's nothing like it. That's the other thing.
It's not
awesome.
as busy as it used to be. They've shortened the music program a little bit. But it's really more about the people you bump into, you know, when you're going to see a band play,
Yes.
you're going to get a meal.
Always.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hey, Jay, you did a guest column for Billboard entitled Artist and Label Services Consultants Are Multiplying Rapidly. How do you know they're legit? Good job.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun putting this thing together, and we're going to give you just a little excerpt. If you haven't read it, this is just a little sample of this column, guest column that I wrote for Billboard. So in January of 2015, after nearly 25 years of working with major labels, I reached the end of my rope. Constant restructuring, mergers, politics, and layoffs finally made me pause and reflect on what I really enjoy doing, and that's using technology and my experience to help artists grow and engage their audience. So I stepped away from the major label ecosystem, and I started an artist and label services company with another longtime major label refugee, Jeff Mosco, at a time when there were very few companies like this that existed.
Right. Well, you said the music industry is witnessing an explosion of seasoned executives from major and indie record labels who are establishing their own boutique artist and label services firms. Most of them were laid off after spending many years learning how to market music, building important relationships, and generally understanding how to create a smooth, organized process to maximize a music release's potential.
and there's plenty of demand for their services. Each year, more independent artists are dissatisfied with chasing traditional recording contracts and taking advantage of powerful yet affordable distribution tools. If you have an email list and some social media followers and a willingness to work hard, you can record and release your own music on your own terms. You can own your own masters and decide how they're monetized, but it's not easy to do well, and you'll probably need some help. So that is, just a little excerpt from this guest column I did for Billboard. Check it out. There's a link in your morning coffee.
Well, in addition to writing guest columns, you're going to be doing a keynote at the MEIEA conference this week.
Yeah, I'll be doing a keynote speech at the 47th annual MEIEA conference in Denver this week. Really looking forward to it. They do incredible work with college-level music business programs.
Yep, for those unfamiliar, the MEIEA is the Music and Entertainment Industry Educators Association. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to the advancement of education in the music and entertainment industries. And as you and I have said a couple of times on the podcast, damn, I wish I was in college now because none of that stuff existed when I was in school. And I would have been the first kid in line to want to go into one of those programs.
Yeah, there's so many great college-level music industry programs, and MEIEA does some incredible work, and I'm thrilled to be able to collaborate with him.
Yeah, before we jump into the big stories, let's thank our sponsors. Jay, support for the show comes from Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Founded by Bruce Houghton, Hypebot is edited by touring artist and publisher Jeremy Young and supported by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Yeah, Bands in Town. Over 100 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform connecting over 700,000 artists with their superfans. So managers, labels, agencies, and artists, they can access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates to music fans across all platforms.
Yep, and every week for so many, many weeks, I get to hang out with my good friend Jay Gilbert, music business consultant, educator, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups.
I can't believe we've been doing this so long, and it still is such a blast. I get to do this every week with Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group.
And every time you say that, I realize that I just had a sketchy employment history.
We all
really
have.
Sketchy.
We all have. Well, let's jump into the stories this week. The first one's from Rolling Stone. This was hot news this last week. Everything you need to know about the Live Nation settlement and what comes next. The company has agreed to concessions involving its ticketing and amphitheater business, but critics are wary and many states want to pursue their own cases still.
Right. Well, the most significant music industry trial in recent history was abruptly cut short last Monday when Live Nation announced that it had settled its antitrust case with the Department of Justice. The news came just 1 week into the blockbuster trial, catching numerous parties off guard, including the judge overseeing the case and even one of the government's own lead prosecutors.
It was surprising. The tentative deal will force Live Nation and Ticketmaster to make several changes to their business model, which could open up avenues for more competition in the live entertainment space, but many remain skeptical of the settlement terms, including politicians, independent trade groups, and even some of the companies that ostensibly stand to benefit from these concessions. So many of the Live Nation and Ticketmaster's fiercest critics maintain that the settlement falls short of what they say is truly necessary, and that is a breakup of the company that dominates the worlds of ticketing, venues, and promotions.
But rather than put a pin in this saga, the deal throws the case into a new phase. The settlement still needs judicial approval, and even if Live Nation's dispute with the federal government gets resolved, individual states could still take the company to court. Here's the complete guide to everything that's happening and could happen. So, is this whole thing over yet? Definitely not. Okay. Then what's next?
Well, along with needing judicial approval, Live Nation also needs to see if it can reach an agreement with all of the federal government's co-plaintiffs, attorneys general from nearly 40 states, plus Washington, D.C., who signed on to the suit when it was filed in 2024.
Many of those AGs have already stated they are not pleased with the proposed settlement. New York's Letitia James, for instance, said it fails to address the monopoly at the center of this case and would benefit Live Nation at the expense of consumers.
Right. Letitia James, along with 27 other AGs, have indicated their intention to continue the fight at the state level. California's AG, Rob Bonta, he said in a statement, just in the first week of the trial, we've already heard that Live Nation fully intended to take advantage of fans, and were able to do so because fans had no other place to go. Live Nation has manipulated the market, made itself untouchable by any competitor, and raked in the cash. Not because it's better, but because it has acted illegally and created a monopoly.
Well, the DOJ settlement doesn't include a financial penalty, but Live Nation announced Monday that it had created a $280 million fund to be distributed to states that sign on to the settlement.
Okay, so what about that deal? The term sheet submitted Monday, signed by Live Nation CEO Michael Rapino and the DOJ's acting antitrust head, Omid A. Asefi, includes 13 bullet points and covers everything from changes in ticketing to Live Nation's vast network of amphitheaters.
Arguably, the most significant concessions have to do with ticketing. To start, Ticketmaster has agreed to let rival companies like SeatGeek and Eventbrite list tickets on its platforms. Ticketmaster will also start capping its exclusivity contracts with venues at 4 years and has agreed to offer concert venues the opportunity to choose either exclusive or non-exclusive arrangements, the latter giving venues the chance to allot a portion of their primary tickets to other sellers.
So wait, haven't Live Nation and Ticketmaster been warned against this kind of alleged retaliation before? Well, they sure have. When the companies merged in 2010, the DOJ instituted a consent decree that was meant to prevent Live Nation from retaliating against venues that used other ticketing companies. In 2018, the DOJ investigated retaliation allegations made by several venues. A settlement was reached in 2020 with Live Nation agreeing to extend the consent decree to 2025. The proposed settlement extends it for another 8 years.
Well, the article says, well, how will it be different this time? The term sheet states that the language of the consent decree will be revised to further clarify that Live Nation can't retaliate against venues that don't work with Ticketmaster or steer shows to venues that use another primary ticket seller.
Right. They ask, so is it really that different? Sure, the language will have been revised to further clarify what's ostensibly been on the books for more than 15 years. And Live Nation has agreed to what are described as robust provisions to facilitate enforcement, including the appointment of a trustee to oversee things like anti-retaliation, non-interference, non-circumvention, and divestiture.
Okay, moving on. What about those really high Ticketmaster fees? Does the deal do anything about those? Well, the article says, kinda. Ticketmaster has agreed to cap service fees at 15%, but only at amphitheaters that Live Nation owns, operates, or controls. There's a lot in here about amphitheaters. What's that about?
Well, amphitheaters are a huge part of Live Nation's business, with the company owning about 150 amphitheaters across the U.S. The other claim in the DOJ's original suit was that Live Nation illegally ties access to its amphitheaters to its promotion services, meaning any artist that wanted to play a Live Nation-owned amphitheater also had to use the company as a promoter.
Well, the article says, do they have to stop doing that now? Well, Live Nation has agreed to open up its amphitheaters. Artists will now be allowed to play a Live Nation amphitheater and choose their own promoter, while promoters will also be able to allocate 50% of tickets to their preferred retailer.
Okay, anything else from the deal worth mentioning? There's language in the settlement about providing artists with more information on ticket purchasers for their shows if they request, and also subject to standard privacy protection.
Well, they say a lot of people seem mad about this deal. What are they most mad about? Well, despite the part of the deal that forces Ticketmaster to let other primary ticket sellers onto their platform, SeatGeek's general counsel called the settlement incredibly disappointing news for all live event fans and said it does little to change the live entertainment marketplace. Do note the state's anti-monopoly case against Live Nation continues Monday.
Right. And there was another story that got a lot of coverage this week. And again, this is John Blistine from Rolling Stone. The headline was, "These people are so stupid. Live Nation employees boast about high fees in unsealed messages." So two Live Nation ticketing directors were boasting about, quote unquote, robbing fans blind and taking advantage of them with high fees in newly unsealed chat records tied to the company's antitrust lawsuit.
Well, the chats, first reported by Bloomberg, were sent between Ben Baker and Jeff Weinhold, who were then serving as regional directors of ticketing for Live Nation amphitheaters. The pair appeared to be speaking primarily about ancillary fees related to things like parking and VIP access, as opposed to service fees tied directly to tickets. Though at one point, Baker said, "I gouged them on ancil prices to make up for charges in the base prices for seats."
In exchange from, this exchange from January 2022, Baker shared a screen grab of data related to a Kid Rock show in Tampa and commented, quote, "These people are so stupid, and I have VIP parking up to $250, LOL. Oh my God. And then he said, "I almost feel bad taking advantage of them," followed by all caps, "bah ha 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 ha." That, of course, that didn't help the perception. When you see something like that, it's very unfortunate. And then that was absolutely pasted everywhere. But with this whole Live Nation Ticketmaster antitrust lawsuit, all of it, we'll keep you posted as it progresses at the state level.
Yeah. Our next story is by our friend Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide. 80 artists generated over $10 million each from Spotify last year. Over 1,500 generated over $1 million. Here's the full breakdown. So Spotify published its annual Loud and Clear report back on March 11th, which includes bundles of fresh data on what artists generated from its service in 2025. The headline numbers show growth across the board.
Yeah, and I was actually invited to sit down and be a part of this, watch this Loud and Clear report. And they do this every year. It's really a great breakdown of their business. So Spotify notes that a decade ago, the very top artists on the platform reached $10 million in annual royalty for the first time. So that's 10 years ago. Today, 80 artists generate more than $10 million annually from Spotify alone. Spotify estimates that approximately 250,000 professional or aspiring professional artists are on the platform globally, up from an estimated 225,000. So they've gained 25,000 in just 1 year.
Right. Well, here are some of the key takeaways from the report. So first up, the new global class of $100,000 artists. In 2025, there were more than 13,800 artists who generated at least $100,000 a year from Spotify alone, nearly 1,400 more than last year.
Right. And all of these stats, it's important to say, this is just Spotify. This doesn't include Apple Music, Pandora, Deezer, YouTube, anything else. So the next point was over 50% comes from abroad. Only 2 years after debuting, artists already see more than half of their royalties, Spotify royalties, coming from outside their home countries on average.
Right. Well, next up is growth speaks many languages. They say today's biggest hits speak more languages than ever. In 2025, songs in 16 different languages reached Spotify's global top 50, more than double the number back in 2020.
That's incredible. The next point, the rising 100,000th artist. So in 2025, the 100,000th highest earning artist generated more than $7,300 in royalty from Spotify alone. In 2015, the artist in that same position generated only $350. So that's more than a 20-fold increase in just a decade.
Right. The next one is from fresh finds to six figures. More than 1 in 10 artists generating over $100,000 annually on Spotify today were first playlisted on fresh finds. That's more than 1,600 artists who Spotify helped break early and who have since gone on to build six-figure careers.
Right. The next point is the DIY path to an enduring career. In 2025, more than a third of artists generating $10,000 or more in royalties from Spotify alone were DIY artists or started their career as DIY artists, meaning that they self-release their music through independent distributors like TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid.
Right. Well, the next one is the $11 billion plus growth engine. So for another year, Spotify was the highest paying retailer globally, paying the music industry more than $11 billion in 2025. This brings total lifetime payouts to nearly $70 billion.
Wow. And a couple more points here. $1.5 billion in ticket sales off of Spotify. So by the first half of 2025, Spotify had driven $1 billion in gross concert ticket sales for artists. That total has now exceeded $1.5 billion.
Right. The next one is songwriters hit new heights. In 2025 marked the largest annual music publishing payout in Spotify's history. Over the past 2 years alone, Spotify paid approximately $5 billion to the publishers and organizations representing songwriters.
Right. To date, about 13 million people have uploaded at least one track to Spotify. 13 million people, up from 12 million at this time last year. Of those 13 million people uploading tracks, nearly 8 million have released fewer than 10 songs total. And around half of those uploading music to Spotify in 2025 were doing so for the first time.
But how many are actually trying to make a career in music? So Spotify says just like posting a video to YouTube doesn't make you a professional YouTuber, uploading a song doesn't mean you're pursuing a music career.
That's exactly right. Some really great stats there from the Loud and Clear report. And our final story, this is from Crystal Delgado for Music Business Worldwide, and I've been following her for a long time. She's an artist. She's also a music industry attorney and has an incredible YouTube podcast called Top Music Attorney. So the following Music Business Worldwide op-ed was written by prominent entertainment and IP lawyer Crystal Delgado. She's the owner of Delgado Entertainment, and her YouTube channel has over 200,000 subscribers.
Right. As an attorney, Delgado is leading high-profile class action lawsuits against the generative AI music platforms Suno and Udio. In the following op-ed, she weighs in on the debate about walled gardens versus open studios. So, over to Crystal.
Right. So this is what Crystal writes in this op-ed. The music industry keeps dancing around an uncomfortable question, whether AI companies using artists' music without permission is really that bad or just an awkward step before everyone signs deals and moves on. The conversation has shifted from, hey, they stole tens of millions of songs from the internet illegally, to, hey, we can all just make some money together. Well, at least for the major labels.
Well, she says an unfortunate truth is that a large portion of these songs belong to independent artists who were never asked for permission, offered compensation, or even being included in the Let's Start Fresh AI campaigns today. Whether independent artists can truly get justice through their pending class action lawsuits against Suno and Udio remains to be seen.
Right. Crystal goes on to write that, but here we nonetheless are, and the conversation has officially shifted to how AI should operate going forward. Some companies say the solution is to do a quote-unquote walled garden. The term sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Think of it as a video game. You can log into the platform, create music inside the system, experiment with sounds, maybe share tracks and with other users, but you can't take the AI music off of that platform.
Right. She says Warner, Universal, and Merlin have all signed up for this structure through settlements with Udio. The goal is properly licensed AI models going forward. But she says here's where things get complicated. We do not actually know what other music is still being included in these licensing pools. Independent artists certainly have not been consulted.
Right. Meanwhile, Warner stands as the only major that has settled with Suno, which wholly rejects the walled garden approach. Warner appears comfortable allowing its catalog to exist in both worlds, AI platforms and wherever users want to share their AI songs, albeit with opt-in terms for artists.
Right. She says this raises a pretty uncomfortable question. Is this Start Fresh campaign really about protecting music? Or is it about protecting the largest catalogs while everyone else's work remains part of the unauthorized training data? Because while the majors negotiate deals, the original issue has not disappeared. These companies built their platforms on mass copyright infringement.
Right. Crystal goes on to write that having seen these deals actually look like on the back end, additional concerns come up regarding whether the major label artists will actually be able to say no to participating in AI training. Implementing licensing structures does not erase the original theft. And notably, there's a new group caught in the middle of this, AI users. Most people using AI music tools reasonably assume the legal risks have already been figured out. But if you read the terms of service on many of these platforms, the users are the ones carrying the risk.
Right. AI users are often required to indemnify the company if an AI-generated track leads to a copyright claim. She says, in other words, if an AI song sounds too much like a real artist and someone gets sued, the user may be the one responsible, not the AI company. Udio even shockingly said in one court filing that its AI users are legally responsible for any allegedly infringing AI songs, not Udio.
Wow. So the current structure of the AI music ecosystem looks something like this. Artists may have their music used without permission to train AI. Users experimenting with AI tools may carry the legal exposure if something goes wrong, and AI companies, the ones that built the AI models off artists for free in the first place, are comfortably protected in the middle.
She ends by saying AI music is not going away. That much is clear. But the current debate about walled gardens is missing the real issue, because before the industry decides what the future should look like, there's still a very obvious question hanging in the air. If the foundation of these AI companies is mass piracy and theft, can AI companies really just start fresh and pretend that part never happened? Jeez.
Well, thank you, Crystal Delgado. We've actually reached out to Crystal's team to invite her on the podcast. I've been watching her podcast for a while. It's super insightful. I highly encourage you to check it out on YouTube. It's called Top Music Attorney. Crystal Delgado.
Yeah, really wonderful points brought up. Interesting article.
Yep.
Hey, it is time to wrap up the show. Big thanks to Hypebud and Bands in Town, our sponsors. So we have been with them since the very beginning. We certainly appreciate them sticking with us and helping us all the way through. We couldn't do without them. By the way, to advertise in the podcast and the newsletter, you can jump over to yourmorning.coffee for more information. Music is by the Licorice Quartet. And if you do enjoy the show, please just tell one friend. Jay and I would certainly appreciate that. So on behalf of that guy right there, Jay Gilbert, I'm Mike Etchart. Thanks for listening in, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.